mentioned, I'm Rachit and I've got an admit from Cambridge. So I'll be joining them in September of this year. And I did fortunately get a scholarship as well over there. So to give you a bit about myself, so I have a background in sports business. So I did my bachelor's in sports business management from Manchester, where I lived for 6 years. After completing my bachelor's, I joined a strategy firm. I was working there as a strategy executive for clients. Post that, I've just recently moved to India for a year. So I'm working for my family business right now, and I've started my own company as well. So I'm raising funds right now for my company. So that's my background.
That's awesome. So we already have some questions from our applicants. So let's get started.
Perfect.
The first question is, what are the key eligibility criteria for different MBA scholarships and how can applicants maximize their chances?
I don't know how I'm going to answer this question, but I think the easiest way would be like every university has a different criteria for their MBA scholarships and even like other courses in their scholarships. I think the first step would be just going on their websites and checking. Like that's the first thing I did. Like I'd applied to Cambridge and HEC, and I think the first thing I did was go on their websites, look at different criterias. Like I know for a fact that Cambridge has like a lot of different scholarships which are also based on different nationalities. So a lot of the nationalities such as Vietnam, Nepal, and some of the smaller countries traditionally, they have a lot more scholarships over there. We even have a scholarship for Indians, which is for a lesser amount, but it still exists. And then there are also scholarships which are based on different professions. I know that there's a different scholarship for entrepreneurs. There's one who come from non-traditional backgrounds as well. So I think the first step would be taking a look over there. And I think when it comes to maximizing on scholarships, I think the easiest thing is just stick to your story. Don't write an answer or don't write an essay just so you get a scholarship, but more towards your story. Because as I mentioned, like I got a scholarship which was more focused on my entrepreneurship story and my background in the UK in the past. So I stuck to my story, and I think that was one of the important bits.
Surely, I agree with these pointers, and they would surely help the applicants to secure a good scholarship. So, since you mentioned there are like different types of scholarships, such as need-based, merit-based, and even diversity-focused. So, how do these scholarships differ, and which one is the best fit for like different applicants?
I don't think there's a best fit for any applicant. I think everyone is going to have their personal story. And as I mentioned, like for my story, the entrepreneurship background worked really well. So to give you a bit of background, like for Cambridge, like I had to write a little bit of an essay. And it was a very open-ended question of why do you think you deserve a scholarship or something on those lines. And my story was as simple as that. Like I'm an entrepreneur. I am raising funds for my own company. So every single pence I save right now goes into the company. And with my background of working in the UK before and being in the UK, I do believe I could contribute a lot more to the Cambridge program. So those two things combined worked really well. I think one more thing, at least for Cambridge specifically, was that you do get like a application buddy from the university as well, who does help you once you get a admit or like once you do submit the application, and having conversations with them really helped. Like I had someone called as Eunice from Cambridge, and she was extremely helpful with me, and like I did have like a lot of candid conversations with her about which scholarship I could apply for. And of course, like when you're applying, you need to like have a checkbox of like, okay, I'm applying to these 6 of them and not to all of them, because if you are an Indian applicant applying to a scholarship which is just for Chinese, you're going to get rejected from all of them. So just be careful that you actually do qualify for them. So I did have conversations with her. I did tell my story to her as well, just on a Zoom call like this, and she did mention like, oh, these pointers could actually help your case quite a lot. I did take her suggestions and it did actually help. And I also negotiated, which is something you could do. So they do accept negotiations once you have gotten your admit or a scholarship offer as well.
That's awesome to hear. So since you mentioned about the scholarship essay, so it would be great if you could let us all know some top strategies for crafting a compelling scholarship essay that really stands out to the selection committee.
I think there would be 3 main things. Like the first one is stick to your story. I think that's the most important bit. Don't write an answer which the Cambridge people or the admissions committee would want to hear. Second, I think that's an extra space for you. Like I could be completely wrong, but since you've already written 4, 5, sometimes 6, 7 essays on your normal application, that's additional space where you can write some part of your story which you have not mentioned before, but also take some pointers before. Don't just introduce a new thing directly into your scholarship essay because they might not know what your whole story is. I would say keep it brief because they do get lots of applications for different scholarships. And if you are applying for a specific scholarship like an entrepreneurship one, or like if you come from a bio background or like any of the different backgrounds, do mention that a bit. Do say that why you would qualify with this specific scholarship a lot more and how that scholarship would actually help you. I think that would be a very important bit as well. So I think these three things, like if you do it well, I think there's a higher chance of getting a scholarship in comparison to ones which don't hit those nails.
Fantastic. I like totally agree with these points as well. So guys, please feel free to drop your questions or queries and we'll be taking them up as well. Another question we have is, beyond scholarships, what other financial aids or loan options are available for MBA students?
Again, like I know Cambridge does not have anything external, like they do directly link you towards the British Council, and like they do have some different scholarships. Fortunately, I didn't have to research a lot on them. I know traditional Indian banks and like other banks do offer loans, but they are like collateral loans. But like I do know someone who took out a loan from Prodigy Finance, and that was a pretty straightforward process. Like the interest rates weren't that high as well in comparison to banks. I think it was like 11% or something. It was collateral free. You didn't need a co-signer or something, and they were very happy with it. I have not used any, fortunately, I didn't have to use any financial aid, so I'm not the best person to answer the question. But I think a couple of Google searches or even conversations with your admissions coordinator or someone from the university would direct you in the right direction when asked.
Sounds great. The next question we have is, how can we begin our research on the scholarship part? And if you could share some insights on how to do a cost-benefit analysis for different programs to find the best fit.
Okay, I'll answer the first part first, like about how to research. Like I think the best way is to go on the website. Just, I think most 90% of the information which you're going to need is going to be there on the website. For me, that was the major factor how I went about with my research, taking a look on what the criteria was. That's the important bit. Once you do think that you meet all the criteria, then what the different groups are or what the question is asked. I know that some scholarships do require a different application as well, so please do keep an eye on that as well. Some just you're automatically applied for it. I know some require a higher GMAT score than the other ones, so you can take a look at those ones as well if you have a higher GMAT score. So, and I think the other bit is like speak to your admissions counselor or the admissions coordinator you have directly through the university. I know Cambridge held some sessions online as well. Like I think they do it every quarter, which is like an MBA session, like an information session. Then they also do like one for financial aid. So do attend those sessions. It does show that you're a bit more proactive. And I know for a fact that Cambridge does keep account on how many of them you have attended, because when you are applying, there is a checkbox of like them asking which ones did you attend and which people did you speak with. I think another key thing you can do is speak to people who have received scholarships. I know Cambridge and HEC, both of them do have like a list of like scholarship awardees on their website. So you can maybe reach out to them. Most people are extremely helpful. They can help you guys out on what their story was, what they wrote in their essays, and if you fit in the criteria or not. So I think that's how you should go about researching. I think the second part of the question was about how to do a cost analysis. I would say like it depends a lot on person to person. It's more, I would say, less of a cost definition, but more of a what do you want out of the program. Like Cambridge is a 1-year program, INSEAD is a 1-year program, but London Business School is a 2-year program. I know they have a 1-year one as well now, but like traditionally it's a 2-year program. US ones are 2 years program. So it does depend a lot on what do you want. If you're just moving geographies, if you want to get something more out of it. So I would say look at those things first, because you are spending a lot of time over there as well. So time also has a lot of money factor, I would say. But I think once you do get an offer, as I mentioned, like you can leverage like other offers from universities as well when you're negotiating. I had initially received, I think, 15% scholarship, but I did negotiate it up to 25. So you can negotiate offers. Don't feel bad about negotiating. They won't revoke your offer or anything. But do keep a good relationship with your application person, whoever it is from the university, because that will go a long way, I would say.
That's really informative, Rachit. We have another question. Once we meet the minimum qualifying criteria, how are different aspects of the profile, like the undergrad grades, test scores, weighted by the scholarship committee before they decide that who gets the scholarship?
I think it's the same way that MBA application works. I think they look at it more holistically. And I think it's more on the lines that they're going to take a look at not just your GMAT score or your traditional university or school or college grades, but more on the lines of what work you have done. If you are applying for a scholarship in XYZ industry, or like you come from XYZ industry, how much did you contribute towards that industry and how much more you would be able to contribute? Also, how much do you actually need the scholarship? So I think those things matter a lot more rather than just having a one good score. But yes, like I know Cambridge has a specific GMAT related scholarship as well. So GMAT is one thing I would say, like do try to have a higher score. But apart from that, other scholarships, just it's a holistic approach, I would say. There's no weightage to a specific thing.
That's enlightening. The next question we have is, what is a good GMAT score for Cambridge and what was your score?
I know that their median score for 24-25 was 645 in the focus edition, and I got a 645 as well. But I would like definitely say GMAT score isn't everything. Like it's the, as I said, like it's the whole approach. GMAT would only be 25%, but I would also lie and like I wouldn't lie and say that hey, GMAT score does not matter. It does matter. So the median is 645. Aim for that. I got a 645. And that worked well for me.
Amazing. The next question we have is your insights about the job market in UK, and like is it advisable to study there if paying off your loan is a priority by getting a job there?
I've not started my MBA yet. I will be starting next year, so I don't want to answer this question right now, but I can answer it in a way that I was there for 5.5 years. So I went there in 2019. I was there till last year, August. I would say the job market does fluctuate quite a lot, but I would say it's like everywhere. The main thing which helped me get the job in like after my bachelor's degree was networking. If you network well, you should be able to get a job. Again, it also depends what industry you're trying to get into, what your scores were, which college do you come from. If you are from one of the top universities, you do try to skip the queue for like a lot of different jobs. But again, as I mentioned, like I've not been in the country for a year and a half, well, almost a year now, so I wouldn't be able to answer your question as well.
No worries. You really answered it amazingly. The next question is, when is the right time to apply for external scholarships?
I think applying in general, just apply everything as early as possible, I would say. There, like I wouldn't say there's like a traditional timeline for it, but like if you know that you're going to apply for a specific MBA, for a specific scholarship application, maybe just try spending as much time on it as possible so you can have like a good story behind it. Speak to as many people as you can, show them your story, see if everything's working well, and just apply as early as possible. It will give you enough time. If things go well, hey, everything's good. If things don't go well and you are very dependent on a scholarship, then you have enough time then to go for a backup. So early would be good.
Totally agreed. Also, if you can share some insights on your GMAT preparation, how and when did you start preparing for GMAT?
I hated studying for GMAT. I'm not gonna lie about this. So I started studying in January of 24. I started studying in January. I stopped studying in Feb. I started again in March. I studied till May. That was the biggest period I studied in. But in May, I went traveling for almost half a month. So that was a big break in between. Then I came back. I started studying immediately after, so that was not a very big break for me. But then from June till August, I studied again. I was supposed to give it in August. I booked my test in Manchester, where I was living at that time, for August. But 6 days before, they cancelled my test for that day. And the next available test was after August, like a certain date. And I was traveling again at that time. And after traveling, I was going to move to India. So I stopped studying for a bit and I gave the test again in October. I would highly recommend don't do what I did. Just study 5 months continuously. I would say just stick to like the classic things, give as many mocks as possible towards the end. And I'm no GMAT expert. I don't know how I got a 645. So no GMAT questions, I would say.
Great. Since you mentioned about the timeline and everything, if you could share some insights upon some good timeline to have things ready, like if someone is aiming for the September intake this year.
I would say, like, again, same thing I said for scholarships, like, try to get everything ready as early as possible. Like, for me, I think I was very, like, I think the first thing you should do is decide which round you're applying in. I would say aim for the earlier round so you can have like a good mix of schools, like for applying in round one, maybe some in round two if round one doesn't work out well for you. So I would suggest like having that split ready in your head much before you are even thinking about like applying or studying. Second thing would be like with GMAT, like just try to give it as early as possible. So if you don't get your desired score, you do have more time to prepare. You can give it again. So, and the first score wouldn't matter if you've gotten a less score or like not the desired one. So I think it's the same thing which I mentioned before. I don't want to repeat myself, but as early as possible. Also, it would also give you a lot more time to work on your stories. Like when I was working on my application, I used to think that there are certain parts of my application or my journey which, yes, this is definitely something which would work it well in my favor. But my consultant was like, I don't think this is as good of a story as you are thinking. Maybe focus on this part of your story, which would be much better. I think MBA and beyond's like content gathering phase of the thing was the longest period for me. And then the writing part wasn't as long because I'd spent so much time of like gathering different things and working with my consultant of getting all my stories out. Like that worked really well for me. So the longer time you give towards that, the better it would be for you.
This sounds good. If you can please shed some light on various platforms where we can apply for external scholarships.
I'm not the best person for it. I did not apply for any external scholarships, so I don't know a lot. I just know that British Council has an external scholarship available. You can take a look at British Council website. Apart from that, I'm not aware of a lot more out there. And I do know that external scholarships are also region locked as well. So like some external scholarships would only work for US, some would only work for the UK, some would only work. I know European schools has Erasmus scholarship as well, so you can take a look at their website as well. I know a lot of companies do sponsor their employees as well, but that does have a lock-in period as well. Like you have to come back and work for them for a certain amount of time. So maybe you can speak with your employer if that's an option for you, because that would be the best thing. But apart from that, I don't know any more external scholarships. Apologies.
Amazing. Since you mentioned that GMAT and GRE like play a quite a amazing. I mean, it plays a major role. So, does GMAT or GRE affect the scholarship chances? If so, how someone with a low GMAT have chances of securing a good scholarship?
I don't want to just scare people and say that, hey, it matters a lot, but it does actually matter. So, but like if you do have a less GMAT score, like again, I don't think I was on a very higher end of the GMAT score spectrum. I was bang median. There were 50% people higher than me as well. So I think it is more on the story and less on the GMAT score. Like GMAT was just more of a tick box for them because I did meet the median. But then there were other parts of my story which I felt did pull in a positive direction, like me having entrepreneurship background, me having already raised money for a company. That helped quite a lot in my narrative. Also, again, like I do think that having like a big network of people in the UK did help for a UK university. And as you did mention, like the UK job market isn't that great, and universities do care a lot about their employment report which comes out. So I think that will help my case, like having a big network over there. So I think those things combined worked a lot in my favor.
That's amazing. Since we talked about the GMAT, how does undergraduate GPA matter during the admissions? And if one has a pretty low GPA, should they not waste their time and money on applying to top 10 universities or rather stick to lower ranked universities?
I
How
think I'll
does that
answer
work?
this in like a dual way. I think the first part would be like, sure, every score does matter, but if you do have a lower undergrad GPA, then you can easily compensate it with like a GMAT score, like getting a higher end of the GMAT score. Like I'm sure after your undergrad, like you've had some work experience as well, which can like pull it in a positive direction. So the undergraduate score would have a lesser value than your GMAT score. So if you can get a higher GMAT score, that would be amazing. And when you mentioned like about wasting time of applying to a top 10 university, I wouldn't say like don't apply or do apply, but I would like in general advice like would be like have a good mix, have like your dream school of whatever it is in the top 10, but then also have like safety schools as well. So like do mix it up a bit so you do have a backup as well.
Great. How can one strengthen their profile to improve their chances of securing a scholarship?
I think volunteering does help. So I volunteer with a company, like with a not-for-profit called Fair Game in the UK. It's a charity which works with football organizations across the UK, so England and Scotland, in helping them being financially sustainable. So I am a consultant for the Scottish side of football over there. So I think that also helped quite a bit because it did show that I cared about the society. I do have a sports business background, so I'm using every part of my experience. I also have strategy experience, which I'm using in that thing. So volunteering obviously shows like that you have a bit of an extra to it. So that would absolutely help. Apart from that, I would say like if you have any achievements in your current work, do try to mention that. If you have a higher GMAT score, try to highlight it. Anything which you think are your USPs, try to highlight them. And I think that should help you out quite a lot.
Fantastic. The next question is, what role do extracurricular activities and leadership experience play in securing scholarships?
As I just mentioned, I think half of it, like it would like volunteering does help a lot. I think leadership, that's something which I completely it slipped out of my mind. Like showing that you have leadership potential or you have done any kind of a management role or you have led a team, use that. I know MBA colleges do love it in my experience at least. And I think that was also a part of my story which I mentioned. Like even if you have not managed a team or like led a project, even if it's like client relationships, like do share those stories. Any big impact you have had with a client or in your own company, try to quantify them. Those little details like do help quite a lot. Don't waste word count on like silly things. Instead, try to quantify them, try to reduce the word count, and just stick to the USPs, I would say.
That sounds good. So we have this question. If I start volunteering only a few months before the admissions deadline, then will it make the admissions officer think that I have done it only for admissions purpose, or does it not matter in the long run?
I think if it's just a couple of months you have done it, and it would be like, oh, I'm doing Teach for India or something very, I don't want to call it generic, but like a bit generic, then yeah, it will look like you've just done it for the application's sake. But if you do something which is more related to your work or your experience, like a teacher doing Teach for India does help quite a lot. Like my volunteering experience was in sports business, and that was my background as well. So that helped quite a lot. Like I had been doing it for a year, but like it was still in the similar domain. So if you can find something in the similar domain, or like I know like a lot of the MNCs and the bigger corporations like do have their own volunteering programs as well. If you can join them, that would be a much better option than just going out and finding something for a few months and then just putting it on your application. Or if you are putting it like putting something new, then try to have a story behind why you joined, and like use the additional question or the additional essay you have in explaining why you joined this.
That's really informative, Rachit. So, guys, we will be taking up the last bit of the questions. If you have any more questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section and we'll be taking them up. The next question is like, since you mentioned about the strategies to negotiate the scholarship, so what are some of those strategies so that we can use in negotiating the scholarships?
I think the first one, which has worked out for a lot of people I know who did get a scholarship, is like using any other university's offer, or like any other university's scholarship offer as a leverage. If they have given you an admit, it means that you are their first option, so they would want you there. I would say, like, just treat it as a job offer. If you get a job offer, you try to negotiate the best salary for you. This is exactly the same. They want you as much as you want them, so don't forget that bit. But also be respectful, don't cross a line when you're negotiating. I think also, as I mentioned, like, try to have a very good relationship with whoever your admission coordinator is. Try to attend as many sessions, because it does show that you have been proactive with the university, and they do keep account of it, as I mentioned before. So I think if you just do these bit and mention those things and drop these things slightly during your email conversations or your telephonic conversations, those will help you quite a lot when it comes to negotiating. Also, like, if you just focus on the story of why you actually need a scholarship, again, like, everyone would love extra money or like would not want to pay the whole thing. But if there is actually a story, like, I did use my entrepreneurship as a very big fighting factor, saying that, hey, the more money I have, the faster I can launch my business, I can put that much more money into my own company. And that did hit a nail, because that was one of the main things I spoke about with my admissions coordinator as well. So just speak with them, see which are the things, just try throwing little breadcrumbs and see which bait they are taking, and just hit the nail over there.
These strategies would be really helpful in our application process. The next question we have is, does choosing need based versus merit based option while filling up the application makes a difference? If so, how do we decide which one to choose?
So with Cambridge, there wasn't a very big list of need-based scholarships. There was more of a merit-based thing, because that's how Cambridge in general operates. So I'm not the best person who can answer this thing, but I would say, like, read the criterias first. Like, if you do meet the need-based criteria more, maybe go in that direction. If you are meeting the merit-based ones more, then go in that direction. And if you have any of these questions, I would definitely recommend, like, just email the MBA admissions committee over there, try to engage with them. These little questions could be like your way into their email network or something, and you can like have more conversations with them. So maybe take this conversation with your target schools.
Sounds great. The next question we have is, what are some of the common mistakes that applicants make in scholarship applications and how can we avoid them?
I think copy pasting would be the most generic response. Like, copy pasting something you've used for Cambridge on HEC or like INSEAD and forgetting to change the name or something. Do stick to the question. Like, if it's an open-ended question, sure, write however you want to write the answer. But if it's a closed-ended question, do make sure that you have answered the question and you're not just putting out a story which you think they might want to hear. So answering the question would be the main thing. And second, do not copy paste. Just do not. And don't repeat yourself as well. Like, sure, you do want to mention like the backstory of it so that it's a more good flow to the essay, but also like they have read the whole thing as well. So no need to like completely explain the whole thing and repeat yourself.
Amazing. We have almost answered almost all the questions regarding the scholarship and financial aids. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to drop in the comment section and we'll take them up next. Or if there's no question, we can end the session here. It was really an enlightening session. We'll wait for 1-2 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them.
I'll also drop in my LinkedIn. I think someone asked for it, so I'll just put
Yes,
group chat. So if someone has any questions, like, you can message me over there and I'll try to answer it if I can.
that's great. I guess we don't have any more questions since you really answered almost every questions and queries that we had. Also, you all are invited to join a vibrant community of MBA aspirants. We have this WhatsApp community. The link is in the description box. You can just join our MBA aspirants group, and we'll be happy to connect over there with you all. Thank you. Okay, so we have this question. Maybe we can take up this last question before ending.
Sure.
If someone is already having post-graduation degree in engineering, would that be helpful in selection?
It depends. Why did you do the master's degree or like a graduate degree, and then you again want to do an MBA? That would be a question which you might need to answer. Also, engineering is a very different domain. So like I think the easiest answer would be, hey, you want to switch into a more of a business field, or you want to get into management or something. So sure, it can help. If you have a lower undergraduate score, then showing your graduate score can help. But I wouldn't say it's a very big positive. I wouldn't say it's a very big negative as well. I think it's a neutral thing. And it also depends on your personal story. If there's like a very good story behind your graduate degree in engineering, maybe try to use it.
Awesome. So we are gonna end the session now. Thank you so much, Rachit, for joining us and like enlightening us all with all the information regarding the strategies for financial aids and scholarship. It was really, really helpful, and I'm sure it would help everyone who are applying to scholarships and also in their MBA application process. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully I answered all the questions.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.